So this video is to explain how you fill in the lab workbooks and hand them in. This course has been designed to be paperless. That means you don't need to buy a paper copy of the lab manual from the bookstore. Instead, you're going to be supplied with files that you fill in and hand in. So I'm going to show you how to do this with the first week's lab. So Lab 1 on the Moodle site, and scrolling down here to the bottom, here is the link to the lab manual file. So you open this up, and once the file's open, you do want to enable editing. And by the way, it is a good idea to open this on the lab computer rather than on your own device, simply because it'll make it easier to copy and paste screen captures into this file later. So right now, I've got this open on the lab computer, and we're actually going to be opening up a program in this folder later, and I'll take screen captures out of that program and paste them into my lab report here. So you'll want to do that too. So now I'm going to show you some ways of adding information to this report. So you can click into these areas and just type things in, like the title of the lab, or the date, and you also want to add your names. And then below, we see two more examples of how we can add information to this report. So down here below, you can just type things in. But we've also got these two areas where we're supposed to add a screen capture of something. So the question says that you're supposed to set up the motion sensor and then make a graph of your partner walking away from the motion sensor at a constant fast speed. And then you'll do it again for a constant slow speed. And you're going to screen capture both of those graphs and paste them in here. So the way that you do this is you'll click the red button and then paste a screen capture over top of it. So now I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to minimize this. And like I said, this is our lab computer screen. And I'm going to open this folder here. And I'm going to open the Velocity program, which is the same program that you'll be using in your first lab. And once it's open, it looks like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point the sensor at something, and then I'll move this something away from it at a constant fast speed. So that'll mimic your partner walking away from the sensor at a constant fast speed. And I'm going to take a graph of this. So to take the graph, I click Collect, and then I move my object at a constant fast speed away from the detector. And now this is the graph that I want to screen capture and put into my report. So to screen capture something on a Windows computer, which is what we have in the labs, you hold down the Shift key, the Windows key, and then you tap the S key. The screen goes gray, and then I can just click and drag to highlight only my graph. So now that's saved to memory, and I can go back to my lab report. And like I said, I click the red box where I want that to appear, and then I can paste it in, either by clicking this paste button right here, or you can also click Ctrl V. And it pastes the screenshot in there. Great. So now I'll do it again for the second graph. I go back to my program, and this is going to be the graph of constant slow motion. So again, I click Collect, and then I do a constant slow motion, and this would be your partner walking away from the device at a constant slow rate. And once I have my graph, again, Shift, Windows key S, and I highlight just the graph. And then I can go back to my report, click the second red box, and again, paste in my graph. And then once I've got that, I can type in my similarities and differences between the two graphs down here. So now let me maximize this, and I'll show you another way of adding information to your report. So going on to the next page down, here they ask you to make a prediction of what you would see if you had your partner walk to the left towards the detector at a constant speed. So they want you to make a prediction here. That's the ideal world case, so it's not going to have any bumps or wiggles or weirdness. It'll just be the theoretical prediction for what you should see for this sort of motion. So you're going to draw in that perfect world case here. And down here in blue, it does give you a little tip on how to do that, but I will show you also. So first you click on the graph, and then you're going to insert a line here. So you go up here to Insert, Shapes, and you want to click the little down arrow at the bottom because it's going to show you these drawing tools here. So these ones are probably the most useful to you. There's a straight line tool, there's a curved line tool, and there's also a freehand tool. So for example, if I wanted to draw a curved line, I'd click this one, and then I can click and click again and click again and double click when I'm finished, and that gives you a curved line. And if you want to adjust things a little bit, you are allowed to just grab the handles and move it around, but I don't actually want a curved line here. I want a straight line. So again, I'd go to Insert, down arrow underneath Shapes, And I'd go to the straight line, and then I'd click and drag my straight line on here. So whatever you think it should be for this sort of motion. And that's all you need to do. So that's my prediction for what I think I'll see. And then down on the next page, you would actually do that experiment and paste your screen capture here. And that's what you do for the first part of this experiment, is you would make predictions, then you'd actually do the experiment and paste the graph in, make a comparison between them, and then go and do it again. So you'll do this a few times at the beginning of the lab, and things actually change when you get to question 12. So let me show you that now. So about once a semester, the physics department likes to make you do a hand-drawn graph. So most weeks, you're just going to screen capture your graphs directly off the screen, but in this first experiment, they actually do have you do one hand-drawn graph, and that's in question 12. So instead of screen capturing the graph, you screen capture your data table. And then you're going to graph that and include both the data table and the graph in your report. So question 12 is where you need to capture your data table. So going back to the program, here's a motion that I captured, and I'm going to want to graph by hand the linear part over here. So how do you actually do that? Well, you only need about 10 to 12 data points. And so what you want to do is click and drag over whatever you think looks pretty linear. And scrolling down on the data table, you can see that it highlights that same data here. And you only need 10 to 12 data points, so I should probably highlight just a little bit more than this. And this data is what we want to screen capture, rather than the graph. So I'm going to move the gray parts up here to the top so I can see them. And then I'm going to screen capture this the usual way. So Shift, Windows key S, and I highlight just the data table this time. And then I go back to my lab report, click on the red box, and paste it in. And if you want to, you can adjust the size of this. So now I've got all my data captured, and this is what I'm going to graph by hand. Now the hand-drawn graph is also going to be included down here. So as I said, you're going to graph your data, and by the way, you will need a slope triangle, and you will need to calculate the slope. But once you've got your graph, it may occur to you that, hey, how am I supposed to get this into the computer now? Well, we have you covered. On your desk, you've got a webcam. So you're going to point this at your graph, take a screen capture of what you see on the screen, and then paste that into your report in the usual way. So let me show you that now. So on Windows computers, like the ones that we have in the lab, there is an app called the Camera app. So you just type camera into this text box here, hit enter, and that opens up this Camera app, which shows you what the web camera is seeing right now. So then you grab your web camera, and you get your graph showing on screen. And you don't even need to take a photo. With this Camera app, all you're going to do is screenshot it the usual way. So Shift, Windows, S, the screen will freeze, and then I can just click and drag to select the graph, like usual. So like I said, you don't need to actually take a photo of your graph. You could just get it showing on screen and then screen capture it in the usual way. And I don't need my Camera app anymore. So I go back to my lab report, click on the red box, and then paste in my graph. Now it's not right side up right now, but we can fix that. If you click on the image, a little handle appears at the top, and you can use that to reorient this. If you want to make it bigger, you also can do that by clicking and dragging the corners. But just make sure that it's nice and visible on there. You will also want to interpret the slope of your graph. So I'll leave that as a question for you and your partners to answer in the lab. But any time that you need to get handwritten work, like this graph or some calculations that you worked out by hand on paper, you would use the webcam and the Camera app and then screen capture it the normal way and paste it into your report. Now after you've completed your lab report, so it's all done and you're ready to turn it into your lab instructor, the next question would be, how do you do that? Well, what I recommend you do is to save this file onto the desktop, just so that it's easy to find. So I'll do that now. File, Save As, I'll put it on the desktop, and the default name should be fine. So there it is, and I'll put it right here so that it's easy to see. And you're going to want to go back and delete this file later, just so that the next group of students that comes into the room can't plagiarize from you. But for now, saving it to the desktop is a good idea, just so you know where to find it. In fact, I'd recommend that as soon as you open your lab report, you always fill in your names and save it to the desktop right away, and keep saving it as you work on the lab. And then you'll want to submit this completed report to your lab instructor. So going back to the Moodle page, down here at the very bottom, there's a hand-in link. So I'll click on that. And this is where I would hand things in to the lab instructor. So I'll go Add Submission, and I get this drag and drop box. So let me minimize this a little so that I can see my file. So I'm just going to grab this file and drag and drop it into the area, and then I can save changes. And now it's in draft mode, which means I can, if I want to, edit the submission or remove it. Or I can also submit the assignment now to the lab instructor. And now it's submitted for grading. And like I said, remember to go back and delete this file when you're done submitting it, just so the next group of students in the next lab group can't plagiarize from your group.